Hi. Sorry, I'm a little. Sorry, my microphone is a douchebag. Douchebag microphone. I wanted to bathe myself, so there you go. My hair's wet because of that. You're welcome for information you didn't ask for or want to know, but now you do. Let's find the trial and pull it up. I believe, let's see, I need to find another one. Oh, they're not there yet, so that's good. It's good that they haven't started yet, and I'm not super late. I think they said they were gonna start at like 9:30, which they seem to be running about 10 minutes late, typically. Who is that? Oh, that is a garbage truck. Well, they forgot me, didn't they? Oh, I think we're ready to go. No idea why I said that like you guys were my toddler child or something, but shoe fits. Throw it.
All right. Good morning.
All right. Let's see if we got any
Have
more
our witness back, doctor.
COVID. Oh, no more jurors out for COVID. That's good. I swear. If COVID makes this a mistrial, that'll be a bitch. I love this lady.
Good morning.
She seems
They bring the jury.
so sweet and intelligent and delicate on how she describes the gruesome things she has to describe. Oh, let's see if I can make this bigger. There we are. Okay, what are we doing? Prosecutor not ready. Probably thought they were going to have housekeeping things like, oh, what jurors are gone now?
Thank you. Good morning. Day number 17. Cross-examination.
Please report, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Good morning, Dr. Reamer.
Good morning.
Let me at the outset say we're going to be yesterday as we went through the track, we saw some very graphic images, and I apologize, but we're going to have to do that again today. You, of course, this is what you see every day.
Yeah, why is he apologizing to her?
Understand how other people may, especially people related to the deceased, might react to that.
Oh, he's so caring.
Now, let me also explain at the outset, until I read your autopsy report, I had never really considered the mechanics of a shotgun or an AR-15 or blackout impact on a human body.
Sure you had. You're a defense attorney.
I hope I can learn some things today that help me understand your opinions. And also help me understand
the poor infantile politician.
Okay? So if I ask
defense
you
attorney.
questions that seem simplistic,
it's because I have a motive behind
my
it.
My understanding of this process is somewhat basic. So I'm going to try to walk through this in a way I can glean what the evidence is and what your conclusions are. Okay?
Absolutely.
So tolerate my somewhat sophomoric approach to this, if you would. Okay?
Of course.
Don't
That's
fall for it,
you'll be
lady.
fine.
Don't fall
So
for
let
it,
me
lady.
understand, first of
He
all,
ain't some feeble-minded
we'll
old
talk about
man.
Maggie for
He
just a
just
minute.
looks like one.
And were you shown photographs of the back of her thigh that were taken at the scene? The
No,
back of her calf, I'm sorry.
I did not.
Okay. So let me see if I can find these. And it'll take me just a second. I thought I had them laying right out here. Thank you for indulgence. One moment.
This is what so many people fall for, not just here, but people aren't familiar with this manipulative tactic that men can seem so humble. I'm just so stupid. I'm the bumbling idiot. I'm just so, you got to be gingerly with me because I just don't know. Yes, you do.
I
Shut up.
apologize. I thought
Don't
I
be
had
off your
sitting
guard,
sitting
lady.
Right here.
You don't need to help him. You just need to answer truthfully. Pooters, we see you. At least I do. What are we doing, people? Go.
Harpoon, if there's an item in evidence, you don't have to show it to opposing counsel to continue with the witness.
This is not in evidence. I apologize.
The judge said, hurry up. I feel like the lady in the brown shirt behind
Your Honor,
Alec
offer
looks
into
familiar.
evidence Defendant's Exhibit 115.
Any objection?
No objection from the state, Your Honor.
And could I get that, please, on the screen? Have you seen that photograph before?
No, I've not.
Okay. In your, I noticed in your autopsy report, you remarked that there is a bruise on the back of the leg in that similar position, correct?
Oh, I don't recall. Can I?
Could you look, please? Thank you.
What are they doing? He's so worried about trial taking so long, but claims he's so worried. Okay, I know there are like rumors that
I don't see in my report where I remarked of a bruise on the left leg.
Okay, so was there a bruise on the right leg?
don't get flustered, lady. You've done this before a bunch of times. You got this. You don't have to help him. He doesn't need help. He's not stupid.
I don't have any, I didn't make any comment about that in my
So
report.
no one asked you to opine about any issue on the back of her left calf?
No, and I did not observe that at autopsy.
And by the time it got to autopsy, had her body been washed or?
No,
Okay, but if this is mud, you wouldn't necessarily expect to see
it
it.
could have fallen off, correct?
Correct. So,
A bruise could have fallen off? I'm
you're
confused.
not asked to opine about whether this was whether there was bruising on the back of the left calf, which would have been consistent with somebody stepping on her calf.
No, I was not asked about that.
Okay. And you were not shown this photo?
Correct.
Okay. And just to deal with Maggie a little bit further, you testified yesterday that the shots were consistent, I think, with someone circling her.
Well, I didn't actually use that term. I said that she was shot from, at one point from behind her and at one point from above her. So that could mean that it could mean that she was turning before she got the first one and then felt, because she could have also been moving.
Well,
So
we know that
Sound more confident, lady.
because
You know what you're doing.
some wounds have stippling.
Don't get tripped up.
stippling and
You got this.
soot. Am I
Sending
saying
you
that?
well,
vibes.
there was no soot, but
Now,
just
what
we
does
have
soot indicate?
soot is a contact wound.
Okay.
So she had stippling, which is not quite contact, it's further back.
3 to 4 feet?
Well, usually, we don't see it more than 3 feet away. So it's somewhere within 3 feet.
Okay. And so she may have been turning. The shooter may have been moving straight on. I mean, that's as good an explanation for what you saw as somebody circling her, correct?
Yes, I mean, from my perspective, based on the autopsy, that is a reasonable explanation.
Of course. So the reasonable explanation is she's moving, trying to perhaps avoid being shot, turning around, trying to run, whatever, right?
Well, she could be turning around after getting the initial shots.
Right.
And then if the shooter was still stationary, then she could have gotten that one. So it doesn't imply that she could have been moving, not just the shooter.
Okay. And the ones without stippling were the barrel of the gun would have been more than 4 feet away from her.
Well, it's kind of a rough estimate, but I would say, it would be more than 3 feet, possibly more than
And that would be the barrel, the end of the barrel of the gun.
That's right, because that's where the gunpowder starts coming out.
That doesn't mean the shooter was 3 feet away. or 4 feet
Absolutely
away.
not, just the barrel of the gun.
Right. And you testified about why there was a wound that would appear to be parallel to her, and your indication is that the shot that would have hit her kidney or pancreas or whatever, she might have been bent over.
No. The injury to the pancreas and kidney was on the right side of the abdomen,
Right.
and that went from front to back and exited the left back. The one that was kind of along.
My microphone's
parallel to
being
the
a
body
butt.
was on the left side of the body going.
So
I don't know if you heard that. Good morning.
One of the shots would have been so painful she would have bent over. What was that consistent?
Yeah, that was the one to the right side of the abdomen.
This is the pathologist that did the autopsy
reason
on Maggie and Paul. She
believe
testified
it's
yesterday. This is
probable,
cross-exam.
Or, quite likely that would have caused her to bend over is because a subsequent shot was going sort of upward in the body. And it's hard to imagine, that wound going upward and then into the head unless she was bent over. So it's a possible explanation of how she was in a position to actually get that.
So she bent over and it would go upwards. Why?
Because if somebody is standing behind her, and there's no close range here, but at least a few feet away.
So she got shot, turns around, bends over, and then you're saying.
She could have turned around or not turned around, or I don't know if she turned around or the shooter's moving.
Okay, did anybody ask you to look at the pattern of ejected shells from the blackout?
I wasn't asked to look at those.
Okay.
Why is she stumbling and sound so insecure?
Surely the wounds and trying to figure out how that happened.
Yes, so I basically, I do the autopsy.
She
I
beyond knows what
everything
she's
to do
doing.
with the body. And at the time, I never heard anything about, I composed my autopsy reports
Right.
without any reference to the scene.
Okay. So let me move along to Paul for the moment, okay? And you indicate that the first shot would have been buckshot to the chest.
I believe that was most likely the first shot.
Well, because the second shot is basically executes him.
He would have fallen to the ground.
Right. And clearly he was upright when that first shot was made.
Yes,
Okay. And it goes in his chest. And would he have to be turned diagonally to the shooter for it to come out his left armpit?
no, not necessarily.
Well, if he shot straight on with
Yeah.
that buckshot, and if that was a
Yeah.
contact wound or
No, it's a close range.
close range, closer than 3 feet.
Yes,
Okay. Can't estimate how far.
I can't, you'd have to test fire.
Okay, so the chest shot, if it's straight on, wouldn't it just go right through his lungs and his heart? And kill him?
Yes,
Okay.
so this was shot at an angle across. So that might indicate that his body was positioned perpendicular to the shooter. Now,
Her
the shooter
Brilliant looks like a
also
gremlin.
shoot from the side, doesn't necessarily shoot from the front. So we can't be 100% sure
So
about these things.
if you're the shooter and
Yes.
I'm Paul, and you shoot me with that buckshot, if I'm faced to the side, would the results be consistent with your autopsy examination?
Yes,
Okay, and we know that some of those pellets, you think his arm was down by his side.
I feel confident about that.
Okay, and the reason for that is there are pellet holes in his arm, right?
No, that's not the reason. The reason is because there's bruising around the exit wounds. They're kind of shored exits. And then we have corresponding bruising on the underside of the arm. So it indicates that they were in close proximity at the time the pellets exited and then re-entered. Because if there was a distance, we wouldn't have the bruising around those wounds.
Okay, and do the pellets go through his arm?
Yeah, there are pellets that exited through the arm.
And so there's little pellet holes on
Correct.
his arm exiting.
Yes,
Did you see a corresponding entrance wound with the pellets?
yes, the entrance pellet wounds were on the inside of the arm.
Right, and then they go out, and I think they struck things after that, as far as you know.
I don't know what happened to them after they left the body.
So either the shooter is to his right,
Yes,
shooting across,
yes,
okay, and you think that shooter would have been closer than 3 feet, but you can't say how
Right.
close.
right. He could have been to his right, or Paul may have turned his body in that perpendicular manner yes.
But either way, there would have been almost immediate bleeding, while not a fatal wound, there would have been immediate bleeding from that wound, correct?
There would have been bleeding. It's hard to say how much, but certainly I would expect some bleeding.
But if there were footprints found halfway into that feed room, and those are Paul's footprints, would that indicate to you that he had stepped in his own blood?
Oh, that's certainly possible.
Okay, not inconsistent with what you have.
Correct.
And that second shot would have come, I mean, as I understand it, Mr. Barber, can you take your coat off and come here, please? I hate to do this to him, but I can't really do it to myself. So if you would step down here, with permission, Your Honor, may she step down? Okay. And what I'd like to have you do is we need to not block these folks over here. Let's see how we do this. Or that gentleman right
You
there.
want me to stand back here?
That would be good. And he's fine. They're fine. Well, unless I get in their way. Let me see if I can avoid not falling over. Okay, so we've already talked about this wound. Yeah, left side. Okay. This wound, which goes in right about here. Show the jury where the wound went in.
Yeah, it was like between the sternum and the left nipple, so kind of right over there.
Right over there. And Mr. Barber's a little bit taller. He was, I think, 5.
Yeah, I measured his height. I don't recall.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but I believe Mr. Barber's a little bit taller than he was. But I think we need to know that because I'm going to ask you to sort of chart things out. So the entrance wound is here and is consistent with him being, how about Mr. Barber, turn just a little bit that way. So the shot would have gone like this.
Yes. That's approximately correct. And it has a slightly pointed out.
Good morning, Christoph Van always. It's good to see you.
Mostly, it's right to left. It's
Okay.
right to left.
How about raise your left arm for me, please? So, and his arm was not.
So this is a cross-examination of the pathologist who did the autopsy on Maggie and Paul. She testified yesterday afternoon, and the defense attorney,
Yes.
Gremlin Harpootlian, is cross-examining her.
Yeah, we have wadding stuck in the
And
side of his left arm.
he apologized for her for being, these is just complicated issues, and I just don't understand. Forgive me if
Well,
I
it's from-
just really
it's left to right,
make
but there's a
this
slight front to back,
complex
because we don't have-
situation
we have
real
some
simple
exit
like.
wounds on the back.
I just-
So if I told you.
Please help me out. I'm just
Have you ever seen?
I'm just a
any
little old
plastic
man.
From
Right.
here? No.
From
Oh, yeah, from this.
Can you
case,
tell I
I'm
dislike
composed
him?
In my career, yes.
He said some
in this case?
really sexist stuff about Mandy
I
Matney,
really didn't.
and I
may
seem
have
like I'm
shown a
obsessed with
very
her or
small
something. I'm
photo,
not. I
like a couple of
just
weeks
have a
ahead
lot of
trial,
respect
but
for
I
her,
didn't have any
and
form, any
none of
opinions
this
based
shit
on
would
that.
have happened
you
without
that
her. Like this trial,
small room,
nothing. So,
the gap between some stacks.
and I feel
all
like
through here and the wall and the little thing.
I
up
can
here,
only
maybe
imagine
3
the
to 4
risk
feet. And this buckshot
that she
goes
took.
through the back window.
Doesn't matter.
on this
Moving on.
very narrow,
In
very
court,
small-
he said
So that would
some
be consistent
sexist
with what
stuff
you're
at
saying.
like trial
Some of the buckshot
hearings
comes through
way back
what
when
buckshot that you shot with in the chest.
when
Yeah, it was shot.
Alec was at a hearing for his
Okay, assume
pardon
I'm
me,
not
Yeah.
misleading you.
financial crimes.
Some shot.
Buckshot goes through. and
He's
hits the
just
back
a
window.
gross. He's
That's
everything
leads
that
holes
I talk
in the
about
window
South
and
Carolina
hits
wise,
the
of like
door, the window frame.
freaking
So that
gross
one of
old
them embedded in the
asshole
tree
men.
Back behind.
And I'm not a
So
man
that is
hater.
consistent with your
obviously.
findings, correct?
Yes.
That first shot.
Got 2 kids with
I'm
one.
sort of intrigued.
Yeah, I hate him
Is there
sometimes,
anything
but
about the
I'm not a
exterior of
habitual
this
man
shot?
hater. But
What's beveling? You know what a bevel is, beveling?
Yes, of course. Beveling is a pattern of
I don't like
defect through a bone. So when there's a gunshot wound that, for instance, goes through, let's say we could get an entrance wound over here and an exit wound over here. We're talking about handgun wounds generally. The way when there's basically a hole.
why are they all just like
inside
hanging
the
out on the
skull,
side? That's so weird.
I can
I mean, I
tell
get it,
which
but
is an entrance
also
and which
not.
is an exit, even without looking at the skin. Okay, so for instance, if I get skeletonized remains with a hole through the head, I can see which is the entrance and which is the exit because the bone bevels in a characteristic way depending on the direction of the bullet.
What is a bevel?
Yeah, bevel is like an angled chipping away of a hard surface.
So as a bullet goes through, and I guess the head is all bone, right?
Well, it's like a solid bone. Right?
Right, so you can tell this is the entrance because, I mean, is it like?
It's the entrance, on the outer table of the skull, it's a smaller hole. On the inner table of the skull, it's a bigger hole. So the bone is beveling outward as the bullet goes in.
So it would bevel in on the entrance and bevel out on the exit.
Yeah, well, bevel in, meaning sometimes people don't always use these words consistently, even forensic pathologists. But there is a inward beveling, but means it's kind of beveled outward. So
Bevel
the
outward,
end-
inside the wood, you see something that would indicate.
wider, yes, it's
Wider.
wider on the inner table of the skull than the outer table.
And when it exits, do you have a narrower bevel, if you will, or defect on the inside than on the outside?
Yes,
That was a lot. Okay. So was there, since this didn't enter bone, is there beveling with the flesh?
no, it doesn't bevel because there's too much elasticity
Okay.
and also just shredding. Frequently can't see beveling on long bones either. It's always kind of-
Can the jury even see her to see
Okay, and the second shot,
what she's describing?
as I understand it, you indicate
We can't hear.
is, can you, well, first of all, assume that he is, so maybe we just forget about the Phoebe for just a minute.
Don't know if you can hear me breathing.
So show the jury, please, where the initial, I mean, there's a shot, it's shot with a shotgun,
Yes,
and it is more than, since there's no stippling or sud or anything that would indicate a close shot, correct?
correct.
So more than 3 or 4 feet away,
More than 3, yes.
more than 3. And where is the initial shot? Where does it hit him?
On the top of the left shoulder,
When you say the top,
the apex.
okay, are there pellets in here?
Yes,
In the apex?
yes.
And I'm going to show you an X-ray in just a minute and have you demonstrate on Mr. Harper, where that hit. And they're shot in here.
Yes.
And you indicated you thought his chin was bent to the
Yeah,
left.
this is something that I believe not necessarily have to be bent, but I do think it was at least tilted in this direction. The reason being, if this is in a horizontal direction and then goes through his cheek, let's say he's just your head, I'm sorry, your head up.
I made a weird
Let's say
face
it's
because
going
I was
through
just
here,
in my head.
and,
I'm thinking, I wonder if this dude's married, and I looked up if he was married, and then
this side of his head.
again, he's
Okay, but
one
meanwhile,
of our
it's kind of over here.
state
So-
senators,
And then
great.
the exit comes
and
back there. So
the picture of
at least
him
we have a
on
little bit of
South Carolina
directionality.
State
I don't
House
know. If it was
website
completely
is
turned
like
to the
him
left, it would have
a
gone
good
into
40
space.
years ago.
But I think
So I'm
it
like,
makes the most sense knowing that a wound travels in a straight line, basically. Of course, these are pellets, so there's
we a
gonna be
little
lot of
worried about our
destruction.
looks there,
But the
Dick.
fact that his face was spared from damage indicates to me that he had his head somewhat turned. I don't know exactly how much, but that it kind of coursed the top of the left shoulder into this left, neck cheek area, and then exited the back of the head on the top.
I wonder if that guy's like, please stop touching me.
X-ray pictures while he's standing up there.
Especially since it seems like COVID is running through the courtroom.
Wait 1 second.
No more jurors were excused this morning. That's good. But we're down to like 3 alternates, I believe. 2 jurors were dismissed yesterday, 2 or 3. It must have been 3 because they had 6. And now we're down to 3. So that's math, right? Shut up, Alec. Shut your face. Shut your face.
I'll put them up on the screen.
You wouldn't be crying if you didn't do it. Shut your face. And again, there's rumors that he is going to testify. Fitz News claims they have a source on the defense team. Whatever, I can say that
I'd
too.
like you to look at
But
these 3 photos and tell me if
I really would be shocked, excited, but shocked if he testified.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think he would want to, and I don't think there's any way that his defense team would let him.
Okay.
You can't
Your Honor, I would offer defendant's exhibits.
South Carolinian your way out of this one. And yes, I say South Carolinian because I'm a bitter bitch, and this isn't Southern culture. This is South Carolinian culture.
111,
So,
112, and 113.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
So could I have, please, step over.
but yeah, that's how these assholes come across. I know when some dude around here is about to like insult me
Okay.
or call me out in front of people or whatever, because they'll start getting. Now,
Okay, so
I'm just a guy.
let's see.
Bring it, dude. I'm not bitter or immature at all.
113, please. Okay, so this is his left arm, correct?
Yes.
And this material up here, we see these little dots. What is that?
Yeah, those are the shotgun pellets.
Okay. And they are, yeah, that's perfect. And so we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Also,
7,
wish someone in my family would
8,
retire
9,
from their job so I
10,
could talk
11,
about
12,
stuff more.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
You're not
19.
bitter?
Along that line.
We're
20.
not bitter.
Along these would be pellets that would be along here, correct?
Yes.
And they begin at, is this the shoulder? I mean, the shoulder.
But-
bone?
If Murdaugh
Yes,
testified,
it's, no, the soft tissue of the shoulder.
forget my kids, forget my family, whatever, I'm gone. I'm going there. I will be there at 3 a.m. standing in line, maybe 4:30. Okay.
Humeral head, which
Just
is,
show on Mr. Barber where
yeah,
that
this
is.
is the bone. of
I'm
the
so
humerus.
obsessed with, like-
Humerus is that long bone,
I don't know if psychology is the right word, just human
and we can see that this is
I know.
basically, it's not really
psychology, study of human
perforating
behavior.
the
So
bone,
yeah, I
and then
guess.
you
I just
see
like to
that
observe.
at the
And I
edge
like it so
of
much
the
because in my life, so many people have told me I'm wrong about
Okay,
what
and
I'm like,
it goes on for
they
ways,
said that,
and then
but
if you would show
I think
me-
they meant that.
Exhibit number 112.
I've been right so many times.
Okay, and would you focus on the?
And it's not
upper
because I'm some
right-hand
genius or whatever they call it.
corner? There you go.
Chavant? What is the word? I don't know
Now,
words. But
that corresponds to this.
I'm not psychic or anything.
Orientation.
Yes.
Okay, so what is this showing us?
I think
There
things are
are,
obvious to other people. And
significant
apparently,
numbers of pellets also in
only people who are obsessed with psychology
Show
are.
us on Mr. Barber where that would be.
Yeah. So,
Stop crying, Alec.
the entrance is here, and pellets are basically spreading, so they're not, they're
Mm-mm.
included. There are pellets in the left side of the neck area over here, and then there's
Mm-mm.
also some going
No one
into
believes you.
the brain.
Okay. And let me see if I can count those.
Look at that. There's
So-
hardly anybody in the courthouse. I
I mean,
could
are
sit
these
back there.
part of what we looked at before?
Yes.
Okay. And how far down did the new ones go?
Yes.
It's a different view, so.
There's been a hot minute or two I've been wrong, but
Okay,
it's
so but
I'm
a number of them.
Yeah, I mean. the
normally
purpose of
like
the X-rays
98% of the
is not
time.
to-
You know, you just
Is basically to show
Patterns?
what kind of ammunition is remains.
You're
in
like,
the body.
Did you remove yourself?
you say that, but
not
I've seen you
every
doing
single
that, and you say this.
A representative number.
So I think some
So
people didn't want to
there's
believe me
exhibit
about
showing
a
you by Mr. Waters of
I'm just
pellets
neutral
recovered. But that's not
person for
all
so
of them.
long. I'm like,
That's
man,
that's all
she's
the pellets
saying
I
that, but look
recovered.
what she's
I-
doing.
I don't stay for days to recover each pellet. It's actually a lot harder than it looks. Here they look like you know exactly where they are.
Nobody
but,
who's
you
neutral
can
gets
fish for,
themselves
like, an
into
hour from
every
one pellet. It's fairly small. and there's
Drama and
tissue.
talks about it.
So you got.
I
you
get a
got-
handful of them.
It's
and
not
that's
neutral.
sufficient.
Did you keep the
Sticking your
buckshot
nose in
separate
business
from
intentionally.
Bird shot, because this is bird shot.
Oh yeah,
I
not
don't
mine
think any
anymore.
of it was
I'm
actually
quick to write.
Buckshot. Buckshot is very large. So
I'm new
um,
nonsense.
they were all
Like whatever. If I'm wrong, I
believe they
still
were all,
protected myself.
collected together.
Okay, so you thought they were all bird shot.
Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't make that conclusion. There's some kind of shot. I didn't make a
So
determination.
you didn't determine the.
Yeah, that's really of the firearms. I'm the pathologist. It's the firearms expert to determine what kind of shot it is.
So,
I said shotgun pellets, and that's
right. So
sufficient.
if previous expert testimony was that the chest was a buckshot and the head was duck shot or some sort of bird shot, you're not going to disagree with that.
I really didn't. It all looked similar to me.
Okay. Now,
I really do like how he words
Let me
questions
see.
because he basically doesn't. He just says
Exhibit 111, please.
all these speculations,
And can you?
one right after the other, in a very confusing manner. That's intentional.
Lower.
And the person's like, huh, wait, you asked that question. Wait, you're asking another question? What,
This
this,
is
that,
the-
huh? And he's like, and you're not going to disagree with that. The last little
And
thing
so
that
what
he
does this
says,
represent?
of course, is something
Yeah,
that the
we can
person
see his
wouldn't,
his upper and lower
it'll
teeth here.
agree or
Upper
disagree in his
teeth, lower
favor.
teeth. And so,
But basically,
he
they're
actually
signing
did
off on all
not
the other
have
stuff
any,
that he said.
um,
And I don't know
fractures
anything
in his
about
teeth.
trial,
So,
but I kind of thought that was like, what do they call it,
his teeth were
condensed or
not all
whatever
fractured.
kind of
So
questioning.
would you
You're only
show
allowed
us,
like
Barbara,
one
where these
question at a
pellets
time.
have been?
At a time.
Yeah, this is just a two-dimensional image. So they're anywhere between,
And
here and here.
Harpootlian's been able to do that quite
It's
a
hard
bit.
to say based on a two-dimensional.
Poor little feeble old man.
And I think, show us where you think the exit wound was.
On the right side of the
The back
top,
of his head.
the top of his head,
The top of his head.
toward the back.
Towards
Yes.
the back. And if you were to extend out the shoulder wound,
I wonder if that guy woke
The
up today
neck,
like
the
knowing he was
path of
going to
these
be a
pellets, and then the exit wound. I mean, did you actually see an exit wound?
cadaver
Yes, it was a
stand
blown
in.
out exit wound
And
of the skull, and
I don't
that
know
was
if you can
how
hear
the
me, like,
brain left the skull.
Why-
It
actually,
had
his
to-
skull
mute.
exploded, basically, correct?
Sorry if you can. It's my
Well, the
point.
skull, and there was a defect there.
I'm so sorry that I
could
did it.
not reapproximate
again
the skull, so
and
there's a piece
louder.
of the skull missing.
Was there a bevel around that piece of skull?
We don't get beveling when there's shattering of the bone.
We'll pursue that a little bit later.
It's
but-
not a typical feature. You could potentially see something that you can say, well, this looks like a little beveling. But in my experience, that's very difficult to assess because there's so much damage and fragmentation of the bone.
Take that pointer, please, using Mr. Barber as a mannequin, and show us the path of that shotgun blast.
So it was going along here and into the left side, I believe, makes most sense like this, and out the top of the right side of the head.
So if you, and that's what you say, at least 3 feet away.
Yes.
Okay.
I do find that hard to follow. She's saying that Maggie was on the ground, someone was on top of her,
Just turn over.
and then somehow the bullet went
So
up this way and out. Maybe I'm misunderstanding
your
what she's saying,
testimony
but
is, correct me if you need to step over here and correct the angle.
No, I don't like that.
Okay, well, show me what you like,
All right. I like this straight.
right?
And then, because this is basically not, it doesn't look like it's going upward. It's going straight and then entering around there. So we have 2 distinct defects, a defect here and a defect there. So I believe the head was at least angled a little bit like that in order for the corresponding continuation of that defect to go in there. But I don't think it's going upward. I think looking at the left shoulder, it looks like it's kind of and if it was going upward, we wouldn't have as much in the neck as we did. So I think it's more like straight on.
So that would still be coming upward at some angle, right?
No, I think it's more straight. I really,
Well, how does it come out the top of his head?
well, that's because
what I wanted.
if his head is is like bent like that,
Right.
then it's going to go in that direction. Yes.
If it's straight, it's going to go
That doesn't
here
make
and then
sense.
out the top of his head.
Well, it actually could. You know, the thing about the neck, heads can be twist and turn, so it's not at all inconsistent with that. It's most reliable that we can look at the shoulder wound and see that it's kind of, you know, it's very difficult to assess the angle from where you're standing, and that's only because the head can bend and twist, and so we can only know where it entered and where it exited, and it's possible that the head could have been twisted or turned to correspond.
Would it be more consistent if he turned your head the other way, Mr. Butler? Like that to get it out the top of the head?
You know, that could be. However, we have a defect over here. So how did that happen?
Pull your head back and keep it over in that direction. In other words, let me adjust him. Back and then over that way.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with it coming in here, going this way, and then out the top
Yes,
of the
I
head?
think that the head tilt to the right, as you've just demonstrated,
Right.
is perfectly consistent with that. However, because the hole here is here, I think even if his head's to the right, it would still be turned like that. Okay, now that makes sense to me.
So,
Right.
So the shooter would be at least 3 feet away from that right there, right?
Yes.
And would he have it up or would he have it down? Or
It's hard to say, and that's because the head can tell. We only have one area of an entrance wound here, and it seems to be approximately horizontal. But it's impossible for me to say whether it's the entrance is kind of below him or at his level or potentially above him with Paul leaning over. It's hard to know. And that's because people aren't necessarily standing up straight. And they've also,
I mean, I'm sure like
think
with the
about
impact, your
injuries on the
head kind of.
there's so much twisting and bending possible.
Okay, Ms. Barber, stand up straight. You get the correct there? Okay, I'm sorry. So now what you tell us is basically from here back on his skull.
What is being suggested is that Paul was shot first, and at
here
first he did
back
not
on
know,
his skull, and I
but then his body turned, so it's very possible
this
he
is
saw the
gone.
shooter.
To the right side.
And then
To the right
and there
um,
were fractures on the left.
Okay.
there's
So we know
different
it's going in
suggestions
that
as to what happened with Maggie because she wasn't running away from the person necessarily. Maybe she heard
So don't put your
what was happening with her son.
Okay,
came
if you go ahead and
forward,
take a
like the-
stand again, please.
I believe the speculation is that I don't know if she got
Okay, let me ask you a couple preparatory questions.
shot head on, but something where
you
her
familiar
body
with
wasn't
what-
completely away.
Yes.
But then
And it
it
is
seems
like
like her body did
A definitive.
turn away after like the
Told
first
Most pathologists have read this.
shot.
Yeah,
It's
it's a-
what I
it's a,
believe.
It's a highly respected book on gunshot wounds.
Okay, so if you go to
What I believe is being explained.
page 228 in this book,
But I'm not exactly sure. But I do know it's heavily. I think it has been determined scientifically that Paul was shot first. If not, most experts do agree.
can you identify this as page 228 in this book? Those images?
Yes,
Oh,
28.
Which again is kind of interesting, if you will, because
Showing-
a lot of people thought in the beginning that
state
Maggie
copy,
was the
page
target.
228.
Like if Alec did it, Maggie was the target and Paul just happened to be there. But then it turns out he asked both of them to be on the property that day. And again, I believe it has been proven that Paul was shot first. I personally believe they were both the target, but I think Paul was maybe an easy. I say easy. Jesus, what did I knock over? I think Paul could have been the target in that Alec can easily blame somebody else for it. It's probably somebody that's pissed off at him from the boat crash. And I think
Depends on different
Maggie
things.
also had to be
Is
a
this copy
target
of what I just showed you out of the book?
because
Yes,
you know your husband
Your Honor, we'd offer this into evidence.
ish, right? We can never know someone 100%, but
Says straight.
Your Honor, no objection.
a wife's going to start putting
Okay. Can
two
I
and
have
two
this on
together.
screen, please?
Even if like she wasn't at the property,
Do this
if
for
he
me. Would you
didn't
start?
ask her to come out there,
Show me the
you're
first
going to
two
know by
slides
your
up top,
spouse's
along with
mannerisms,
what's written there.
especially if you've been married for that long and had 2 kids together.
Okay, so the caption on this
You may
shows
not want to
sequence
believe
of
it, you may
events that
not see it at
occur
first,
at the
but
muzzle on the firing of a shotgun.
you're going to figure
Note
it
the
out
large gas
that
cloud
they were
that is partially
responsible.
responsible
So
for the severe nature of the wounds in the contact range. So
his surviving
the
son
first
doesn't
A
seem
is
to
the
be
shotgun being
questioning
fired,
him
correct?
that much,
that's what it looks like, yes. I didn't read the captions.
but I think a wife would.
Right now?
So
There's captions at the bottom.
Are there
Yeah,
captions at the bottom?
so-
Okay, no, I don't think there are. But
as horrible as it
I'll
sounds,
show you the book.
I can see where he thinking like him, not like me, that you got to like eliminate all
Okay,
questions.
So I imagine that's sequence.
and
No, that's.
I don't even want to say loose ends because I don't think it's a
the
loose
sequence
end,
of a shotgun shell being fired.
but anybody connecting the
are-
dots
The first one is it being
to
fired.
you being
The
responsible
second one,
for killing Paul.
note the large gas cloud that is partially responsible for the severe nature of the wounds on contact.
I think he
And
probably
the third one is,
believes that he can convince
contact range.
his
and
surviving
then you
son
see
that
on the
he's not
last one,
responsible.
I don't see them on my screen.
I'm sorry, okay, go down to
Maybe not
class two.
anymore,
There you go, C and D.
but I don't.
You see
I think
I guess
the first
at the front end would be the
year and a
pellets
half
and
after it happened,
the
sure.
gas would be preceding the pellets. Is that correct?
But I don't think.
Um,
I think he knew
no,
he probably
I
couldn't
don't
convince
think
his wife.
that's correct. This is depicting
Just
contact range.
my guess.
Specifically says a contact range.
Right.
So pellets are not yet released from the water.
Okay, well, we're going to go a little bit further on that in a minute. Let me,
Yeah.
referring again to, well, let me ask you this question. If this book says contact shotgun wounds of the head are among the most mutilating firearm wounds there are, you would agree with that?
Yes,
Extensive destruction of bone and soft tissue structures with bursting ruptures of the head are the rule rather than the exception. correct?
yes,
These are the wounds of which an individual is said to have had blown his head off, right?
yes,
In some cases, this is almost literally true. The skull may be largely fragmented and the brain pulpified. Large fragments of the cranial bulb and cerebral hemispheres are often ejected from the head. The scalp is extensively lacerated due to 2 factors: the charge of the shot entering the skull and the gas from combination of the propellant.
Objection to the formal question, Your Honor.
What is the question?
Does this, and one pathologist told me this is the Bible of gun wounds for pathologists, is that correct?
Well, there's a lot of literature, and this is a highly respected primary source. It's not the only, but what are you asking me about?
Does the shot, well, are there 2 factors which contribute this the things we just talked about, the shattering, perhaps even the ejection of the brain? Are there 2 factors? The charge of the shot entering the skull and the gas from combustion of the propellant.
Okay, well, he's actually discussing contact
Yes,
shotgun
ma'am.
wounds, and that's not what we have here, but we have similar destruction.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But this is about a contact wound. I agree.
Okay,
You have not indicated it was a contact wound.
correct.
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay,
The shot directly, does the shot on a contact wound from a shotgun directly fracture the skull and shreds the brain while at the same time producing pressure waves that increase the severity of these injuries as well as ejecting the brain tissue?
yes, it frequently happens that way.
Okay. The gas entering the closed chamber of the head expands rapidly, let me make this a question so we don't get objected to. Does the gas entering the closed chamber of the head expand rapidly, adding to the pressure waves, acting on the bony framework of the skull? The only way for the skull to relieve the pressure produced is to shatter.
I would agree with that.
So it's your opinion that, well, let me ask you this. If the shotgun muzzle was 3 to 4 feet away, would gas have entered the body?
Well, it's still a very destructive wound. In my experience, there is still a huge amount of energy that would enter the head from a shotgun wound, even if it's not contact.
Okay, and perhaps I misstated the question. Would gas, just a yes or no
Yeah.
be fine, from 4 feet away enter the body and be destructive?
Yeah, I don't know if it's gas that's causing the destruction, but there must be some amount of energy that's causing this destruction, because a shotgun wound to the head, no matter what the distance, causes. But whether it's due to a gas or not, I really can't answer that question. This is not something I've done not experiments like this as in the book.
But this is a book you check for reference, correct?
Well, it's a good source, but I don't know whether gas would be responsible for the destruction of the skull from a few feet away. There is destruction of the skull. I don't know if it's attributed specifically to gas or to other factors. So I really can't answer that. And if he says that, that's fine. But I don't know. He's talking about a contact wound. I can't not necessarily extend that conclusion to what would happen a few feet away. But there is frequently destruction of the head.
I understand that there was massive destruction of the head. I'm just trying to get my arms around the definitive work on one of the definitive works indicates that the most instances, the vast majority, that kind of destruction is caused by gas on a contact wound.
Well, this is a mechanism that he's describing based on experimental data. And I'm a forensic pathologist. I've not performed this kind of experimental data, and nor would I extrapolate from his conclusions about a contact gunshot wound to whether the same amount of gas is produced at a distance.
Well, ma'am, and Dr. Reamer, we can walk through this, but these are based not on some experiment, but actually on people that typically shot themselves in the head, contact wound with a shotgun. Does that surprise you?
Well, these are depictions of shotguns being fired. Contact shotgun wounds to the head cause massive destruction, and a lot of that is from gas buildup.
Okay, now we're on the same page. Literally.
Are you?
So it's your position, there's a lot of energy when it's fired from 3 or 4 feet away, hits the shoulder, hits the neck, comes through and hits the head, and the head explodes, correct?
Yes.
And have you had a number of autopsies you've done of victims whose heads exploded as a result of a shotgun?
Yes.
Okay. And many of those were contact suicide wounds?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever had one, and we can talk about the details of that, where someone was shot from 3 or 4 feet away, no initial contact with the head? You would agree, no initial contact with the head.
Correct.
It goes through the shoulder, the neck, and then the head explodes. Have you ever had one of those?
Yes, these are very dynamic, and he still actually had a lot of his head there. Sometimes with the shotgun wound, the entire head is basically, you don't really see very much above like the teeth. So this was, there was obviously horrible destruction of this skull, but his face was intact, and frequently a contact causes fractures of the face. So, I don't see any evidence of contact range discharge on the left side of the neck. So it was not my conclusion. That was not my opinion that this is a contact shotgun wound.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this. Your position is the energy by a shotgun blast that went through the arm.
I like how the prosecutor
through
is
the neck,
just behind.
and then up to the brain,
Dick,
still
like-
had enough energy. Is it the energy caused by, is it
I'm here,
pellets
bro.
going into the brain?
Yes, well, not just pellets, but there's also fracturing of the base of the skull, which is a bone at the that holds underneath the skull.
And I didn't know they were allowed to just
fracturing
kind of
with
stand up and
sufficient
hang out in
force can
court. I
actually
know they're not
push the
hanging
brain
out,
out.
but you know what I mean.
And
So
not
it's
only
a
push-
variety of mechanisms that could contribute to the destruction and the loss of brain tissue.
It not only pushes, it fractures the skull. In this case, the brain was brought to you in a separate bag because it ended up laying at his feet. It went up in the air and then plopped down at his feet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The entire brain
Most of it, yeah, except for the brain stem.
exploded out of his head.
Yes,
And the skull was at least almost destroyed around where you say the exit wound is, correct?
yes.
Now, you've indicated the state did not show you any crime scene photos, correct? Or-
Yeah, I really didn't look at them. Yeah. I mean, they might have said, oh, here, you know, this is a picture of the wall, but I didn't look at them. And they were thumbnail size. So this is a couple of weeks before trial.
Okay, now if you would put back up exhibit number, here we go. Exhibit number 112, please. No, I don't think, is that 112? That's the chest. I apologize. 113. Can you focus on that area where the pellets are, please? Yeah, that right there. So at his shoulder, how big a spread is that? As it comes in, is it 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, that wound?
I didn't measure the spread of the pellets.
Okay, so how about, I apologize to the jury, this is pretty graphic. How about pull up 109? Okay, so this depicts a very big wound in the shoulder, correct?
Yeah, that's a typical appearing shotgun entrance wound.
Okay, and
Can you come down here for just a second, please?
hold on, wait 1 second. You're right. I need to offer
Your
this.
Honor, yeah, state the request that the defense page exhibit and evidence before the judgment of jury.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Mhm.
And this is exhibit number.
Again, I feel like that's why Creighton Waters was standing over there, because Dick is getting closer and closer to the jury,
What's this exhibit number? I'm sorry.
so he can kind of
109. Okay.
flash them stuff that's not entered into evidence. You're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm such a feeble man. I didn't know I was
I apologize,
alive.
Your Honor. I got ahead of myself. I'll take 2 seconds. 110. 110.
We see through your bullshit, Poot. Dick Poot.
This is state defense exhibit number 109. Have you seen that before?
Yes, this is my
The
autopsy.
paper rattling
Offered in
and
evidence. Your Honor.
packaging throughout this whole trial has been a bit much.
You put it up the screen, please.
think I'm gonna start learning trial strategy. Not that I'm ever gonna be an attorney or anything like that,
Now,
but just seems fascinating.
at this
Maybe I can
photo-
use it in my marriage.
We see, this is the entrance wound.
We're not getting
And
divorced or
then it
anything.
goes in
I just
here,
mean for
correct?
like arguments on whose turn it is to do the
So,
dishes.
but this is a much
Happy
larger wound
Valentine's Day,
than the
babe.
next one in line, is it not?
Well,
I'm such a
that's
nutbag.
okay.
Well, let me ask you this, in terms of understanding a shotgun pattern, as we saw in the photo, starts out basically the size of the shell, right? But if you just answer the question and then you can explain. Does it start out as the same
Motherfucker.
size as the shell?
Yes.
Okay. And as it goes forward, the pattern expands, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it continues to expand even after it hits something, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now please explain to me why this wound, and it looks like it's, I mean, if you use me on my left shoulder, what is the
Yes.
I feel like he's blocking himself in prosecution too, so they can't see what he's doing.
Even though what you said is correct about the spread. And that's because the entrance wound to the left shoulder, it's not straight on
He keeps
perpendicular. If it
blocking
was
her
straight
from
on
the prosecution.
perpendicular, then we would have a smaller hole. But this is going in a tangential manner across. So we're not really looking at a perpendicular, entrance wound that's going to make a round hole. So as it's coursing along the top of the left shoulder, we get more of an oblong hole. In contrast, its continuation into the left side of the cheek is kind of straight on at a 90-degree angle. So that's why that is smaller. So there was nothing about this that was inconsistent with what I would expect from a shotgun wound.
So tell me, so you're saying this shot, this second hole was made in this direction. Is that what you're saying?
I just said that was a continuation of the logical sequences. It went through here, it's causing a lot of destruction, and then entered the left side of the neck.
So that big wound is because it's in a different direction than the small wound is your explanation.
At a different angle
Right.
along the surface of the skin.
Okay. And there's no pellets in his face, are there?
There were some pellets that we saw in the x-ray.
But not in his face.
Not in the front of his face.
Right. So as it continues on, is there any evidence that it expands even more?
Well, it did cause, there's so much destruction, we can't exactly, have a single, easily tracked path. Because when the skull is involved, there's so much expansion, usually either from gases or just from the blast of the projectiles, that we can't really track. It caused an exit on the right side of the back of the head with loss of the brain and lots of skull fractures, predominantly on the right side.
Okay. But you would agree with me that wound appears to be much larger than the next wound.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And you have an explanation for that. Could the other explanation be that this is an exit wound and that is an exit wound? Could that be a reasonable explanation? I'm going to show you something in a minute that may assist you in making that decision. But is it a possibility?
That is not, I do not believe this is consistent with an exit wound from a shotgun. There would be a lot more destruction because, it had to be coming from somewhere, right? Somewhere else.
How about a contact wound on the head, on the right back of the head? What would you expect to see on the bone structure of the back right of the head if that was a contact wound on the head?
Well, I would not expect the brain to come out. We would have had opening of a lot of skull. We would have had a path through the brain, which is not at all what happened here.
So if there was a contact wound, and we saw a moment ago, and you agreed, that the gas would enter first, explode the skull, the brain would pop out. Did you find any pellets in the brain?
I don't remember if they were from the brain, but the brain was basically intact. A contact gunshot wound to the top of the head would cause, a huge defects of the brain.
Right, because the gas going in on a contact wound would create such a pressure, as we just read, that the skull would explode and the brain would pop out.
No, I don't think that would happen from a wound that is going toward the brain from above. I think we would have certainly destruction of the brain, but it wouldn't just pop out because it's in the path of fire. There's going to be massive destruction of the brain. It may end up on the floor, but it's going to be in multiple fragments. So in my experience, doing this for a long time, I do not think that the brain would have popped out the way it did from an entrance wound on the top of the head.
Okay. Now, let me ask you to look at you put, and this is under seal, and I would also, Your Honor, ask the other photos I put in be put under seal.
They're under seal.
Thank you. Would you put defense exhibit number 59, and I apologize to the jury for the graphic nature of this. Go ahead. Okay, I would like you, do you recognize this?
I've not seen this photograph.
Would you disagree with me? That's a photograph of, it's been testified, Paul Murdaugh
It does
at the
look-
scene
Yes.
and the way he was found. You've
I
never
don't
seen?
know how he was found.
Okay, but this is a photograph you've never seen.
I've never seen this photograph.
Okay, let me get one thing before I ask you questions about it. Okay, a couple things. If you would center on his head. Okay. And make it a little bit, can you make it a little bit bigger, please? Okay. So do you see a sort of semicircle defect in the skull right here? You see where I'm looking?
Do it again.
Right here?
I do see a defect, yes.
Right, in the skull,
Yes.
semicircle.
It does have a semicircular.
Okay. Can you determine from looking at the photograph any beveling?
As I said earlier, beveling is not really too reliable when we have so much destruction of the head. But if you're asking me if that could have been a contact shotgun wound to the top of the head with a kind of curved entrance, I would expect to see soot. We always get soot from contact wounds, and it's deposited on the outer table of the skull. So there is no burning, no soot on the outer table of the skull to
Did you
support that.
take an autopsy photo of this area of the skull?
Well, when he came in, I do believe I took an area of the skull, but it may not have caught that.
Okay.
perfectly.
Did you shave his head?
No, I did not.
You did shave Maggie's head for a head wound, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And why didn't you shave his head? To examine this, you would agree with
She
me
keeps
that
saying
had been shaved,
like
you
when
would have
she's
had a better
questioned,
look
and it
at
makes
this
her seem like she's
Well,
unsure.
I believe that my assessment of it was correct, and without, usually shaving is along an entrance wound, not an exit wound. So I determined this was an exit.
I get it.
and
I've never
shaving
been
is not
a witness,
done
expert
on
witness, but
exit
like you
wounds. I
have to
shaved
know
Maggie's because that was an entrance wound.
their whole
and it gives me
intent
an
is to
opportunity
knock
see the
you off
margins
your
of the
game
entrance.
and
I guess what I'm
make you
asking
question
is, you
yourself.
decided that
that that was an exit wound without
So
shaving
don't
the
question
head,
yourself.
without looking for
Just
stippling,
answer the
without looking
questions.
for
Don't
something.
explain
Because you
yourself.
would
I
agree
feel like
with
she's
me
explaining
that
herself
to
and
do that
and whatever. She was so confident yesterday, and I
effectively, you'd have to
understand
shave the head.
she's not being like
To observe
cross-examined, but
marks on the skin.
man, for
Yes,
doing this
but
for
also there would be soot on
250
the
plus
outer
times and
tip
being
of
the
the skull.
expert that she
Well, did
is,
you look for
I'm
it? You apparently
surprised
had
she
already
doesn't seem
decided.
more
Yeah,
confident.
well, I did look. I don't necessarily,
does.
I didn't take a picture from this angle
She
necessarily.
seems a little
I did
rattled.
take a picture
I'm surprised by
after
that.
I, from the top of his head. But my determination, based on my experience, was that the entrance wound was over here. Doesn't mean somebody else cannot disagree with me. But that's my opinion.
Somebody can disagree with you, and that would be a reasonable disagreement.
Dude, stop. Just
Well, I would say
answer the
that
question.
people can disagree, but that doesn't mean that
you're
doesn't
talking
change
too
the
much.
truth.
You would also agree with me, though, that your notes contain no mention of the lack of or presence of stippling or soot on that part of his head. You never looked for it, did you?
Well, I look for it. I look at all of the wounds, and if there was, I would have documented it. But I don't document the absence of soot or stippling on what I determine to be an exit wound.
And I don't see any note of yours where you examined that exit wound in detail. I mean, shaved his head, looked for some distortion that would be inconsistent with the conclusion you'd already come to, correct?
Well, I came to the conclusion based on my examination of the entire area.
Okay, and as this book indicates, the vast majority of this kind of damage, the vast majority, I mean, they say most probably, almost certainly, is a contact wound to the head that injects the gas, which explodes the head. Is that not true? You want to
No,
read the book?
I do think that you're kind of, you're extending his statement. He's describing contact gunshot wounds to the head. Actually, a contact gunshot wound to the top of the head like that, like I told you, it would have caused fragmentation of the brain, not ejection of the brain, based on my experience. And then there would be a lot more, we would have a lot more fragment. It would never have just left the rest of the skull intact. We would have had fractures of the face. There's massive amount. I don't believe that
There you go, lady.
the
You
fractures
know
of
what you're
his
talking
skull
about.
are
Don't let him make
consistent
you think
with,
you're not.
that being a contact shotgun wound. I understand that that is a massive destruction of the head from shotgun wounds. But in this case, we do have the brain basically left intact. We don't have a path through the brain.
I think you got her
It's
in the
very
beginning with,
dynamic. You know,
forgive
there's
me, I
gases,
just don't
there's pellets,
understand. So
there's
she
fractured
like went
bone.
into like a helper
But in
role
my opinion, based on my
because she's used to
experience,
being that
was
way
not
as a
an
professor.
entrance wound, and that this was not an
He
exit.
got her.
And
He's a
you
dick,
indicated, I
but
looked
he's
at your
smart.
autopsy report.
But he's a dick.
Well, first of all, do you believe this was caused by pellets entering the brain cavity?
No, I think it's a combination of different things. I don't think it's from pellets specifically.
What was it?
I think it's from the gas buildup in the brain and fractures of the skull, and that just basically a lot of gas buildup.
So that's what we're
I'm gonna be
saying.
opening some of my
It's
clients'
a huge
first.
amount of energy from a shotgun.
I'm sorry, if you'd answer my question, where did the gases you just testified that caused this destruction come from?
From the shotgun wound.
A shotgun wound you testified was created by a weapon that was more than 4 feet away. The gases traveled through the air, traveled through that shoulder wound,
Yeah.
traveled through the neck, and then exploded his head.
It's not just gases, but it's a combination of gases and the pellets as well.
But there would have been a significant amount of gas involved to explode his head.
Yes.
And there would be pellets, would they be present in the brain after that brain exploded?
The brain, the pellets may not have reached the brain. The brain may have been ejected just by virtue of the skull fragmenting and base of the skull pushing it up. It's not possible for me say exactly why the brain came out here.
But you would agree with me, based on the literature, it's much more common for a contact wound where the gas goes in contact to explode the head.
Well, in my experience, a contact shotgun wound could cause this type of damage, but it would frequently cause even more damage. Like a lot of times there's just massive destruction of the entire head. At least the front of his face where bones were intact.
I hear what you're saying is that it would have produced massive destruction, but it would have always included massive destruction of the face.
Okay, well, let me tell you, there are other reasons that why I concluded that the entrance wounds were here. Okay, we have basically a bunch of tight pellets over here.
Right.
If they would be more spread out if the entrance wound was here. By the time it got to here, there'd be a lot more pellets over a wider area.
How many more?
Well, I'm not saying more pellets. I'm saying there would be a wider spread of pellets. This was still in a relatively narrow range. It was along the top of the shoulder.
From
So,
my head to my shoulder on a direct line.
yes.
How far is that?
Well, honestly, the spread would not, I don't believe they would have been as tight along the shoulder. I think we also would have had a larger defect probably on the.
A larger defect
Yeah, look.
between here and here?
Every single shotgun wound and gunshot wound, they're each a little bit different. So a lot of this is judgment and assessment at the time of the autopsy.
Well,
and it's not theoretical whether there's gas buildup or not gas buildup. I can see this as a shotgun wound. We have pellet entrance defects around this large defect.
Pellet? You just told me you couldn't do a bevel assessment on skin. How do you know their entrance rather than exit on the skin?
Well, I'll tell you.
Good.
And the reason is if
What
if
is
pellets are going through
him?
the shoulder, we wouldn't have a
I'll
big,
tell you,
large,
good.
oblong defect. We would have holes from the pellets, not an oblong ovoid defect. So
Don't
you'll
get flustered,
recall
lady.
on his arm,
You know what you're doing.
those pellets, they came
Trying to
from-
rile you up.
and then along here, we just basically have pellet exit wounds, and we don't have that on the
can't
shoulder. We have
Imagine being married to
basically
this
a
asshole.
larger confluent wound that's not caused by individual pellets.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. If you can take that picture down, please.
Yeah. It's not my opinion that is the entrance wound is to the top of the
And
head.
could you put up, no, we don't even need to do that. I don't need to see a picture. The chest shot goes through his chest, comes out under his arm, right?
Yeah, on the left side, yes.
The left side comes out under his arm. And what do we have? What do we have on the inside and outside of that arm?
We have pellet,
Coming in and out. We have a pattern of pellets,
yes,
just like the pattern of pellets that you're talking about on what you say, the exit wound here. Exit wound from about the same distance, pellets. From the same distance, pellets, correct?
well, there are pellets in the shoulder, but we
Yeah.
have a ovoid defect at the top of the left shoulder. They're not a bunch of individual pellet wounds. We have pellets embedded in the tissue, but the actual defect, we don't have a defect like that on his arm, even though it may be the same distance. And the reason is because the pellets are exiting, but each one is going through the left arm individually. Okay, whereas if this was the entrance at the right side of the top of the back of the head, it's a good thought, let's think about this. And if it was coming through the head, regardless of what happened to the brain, and then exited here and then went along here, we would have a lot more individual pellet wounds on the shoulder as opposed to a large, huge, big area of skin and subcutaneous tissue loss. Pellets don't cause that type of damage on their own.
So you and I both counted something between 30 and 40 pellets in that shoulder wound a little while ago, right?
Yeah, there were something like about that.
Do you know how many pellets are in a duck shot or bird shot 12 gauge shell.
No, I don't remember. That
So
is
you don't
something.
know whether that was 90% of the pellets or 60% of the pellets or 50?
No, I do
Does
not.
that make a difference to you? How many of the pellets that were fired ended up there?
No,
But you're saying just because the wound here is bigger and the wound in his chin is smaller, doesn't mean the shotgun pellets spread out, right? They spread out and they don't contract. You would agree with me? Just please
I don't
answer-
really
please
know
answer-
whether to agree with you because I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, let me rephrase it. If you view that wound on his shoulder as the entrance wound, and I believe you have,
Yes,
you would agree with me that it
He's
is.
being a him.
It's
He's
coming
being a
across the
him.
top or whatever. It is a bigger wound than the wound in his chin. In other words, are you saying that those were so focused that they, as they went through or across the top, they actually contracted?
no.
Okay.
I explained that this was larger because it was tangential across the top of the
Okay.
shoulder. So
But
that's the kind of,
You agree with me that reasonable people could have a difference of opinion about these facts?
yes.
Okay. Pardon me.
Nice try, Dick.
2 seconds to make sure I put everything in the evidence on my end.
How can you have a different opinion on facts? Facts are facts. I'm kind of disappointed in her testimony today. Feel like she was, again, a little rattled and
Apologize, Your Honor. I'm spit everything out over here.
knocked off her game. Maybe nobody.
This until
I feel like she lives in South Carolina, has for a while. She should
Thank you, Your Honor. May I please report?
be familiar with this type of dude.
Your job is to do what? What do you do?
I do an autopsies in order to determine the cause and manner of death.
And when you're asked to do an autopsy,
I know. I
are
felt
you
like a lot of her
told any
answers
sort
would
of
be like,
conclusion
"That's
to
in
come
my
to, or
not
you
in
just
my
look at
job
the evidence in the
description,"
body
or
before you and come to whatever conclusions that body tells you?
Yes, and I examine the body and I come to a conclusion based on reasonable medical certainty, based on my education and experience.
So is it part of your job to look at crime scene photos and that sort of thing? Or are you relying on what the body tells you?
My job is to look at the body. That's my job.
That should have been her
Crime scene
answer.
Evidence is somebody else's project. That's not incorporated into my conclusion.
I want to talk a little bit. We've gone into a long examination about the top of the head, and you talked about soot and stippling. So I want to make sure the jury understands that soot and stippling and what that tells you and what it doesn't tell you.
Okay. So the stippling is like the pieces of gunpowder that deposit on the skin when something is fired within 2 to 3 feet from the barrel of the gun, not the shooter, from the barrel of the gun. Soot is like real burning powder, burning marks from very hot gunpowder that's still basically burning, and it causes like a burning wound. That's the soot, and we don't see soot except within a few inches, depending on the gun. But we would like not expect to see soot further away from 6 inches. So the fact that we have stippling but no soot, we can fairly say it's not closer than 6 inches, even though I know it's most likely within 3 feet.
All right. So you observed stippling on the wound to the chest for Paul, correct?
Yes.
Did you observe stippling anywhere else?
No.
All right. Did you observe any soot at all on Paul's body?
No.
And did you, particularly on the top of the head, did you observe any soot there?
No.
You were asked a little bit, and you had testified yesterday about, the tilting of the head and the manner in which the shotgun blast went through the chest, through the shoulder, into the neck, and then out the top of the
Yeah,
head.
I think that's a reasonable conclusion.
All right. And that still is your most likely conclusion, is that
That's
correct?
my most likely conclusion.
All right.
to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. It
So
doesn't mean
reason-
it's 100% the only thing, but that's my opinion based on my experience.
Girl, quit
many
explaining
autopsies
yourself. You aren't on
Approximately
trial.
5,500.
And how long you been doing this?
Oh, 20 plus years.
Okay. Dr. Reamer and Professor Reamer, correct?
Yes.
You were asked about the book, and all that discussion that the defense counsel was talking to you out of the book, that was dealing with a contact
I
wound,
would be
correct?
less disappointed if
Yes,
he
I
hadn't
mean, I'm
been
not
an
going
expert
to
witness for
disagree with
over
a
200
book,
times.
but
Like,
that's, the discussion is regarding a contact.
don't get it. Why
shotgun
she was so
wound.
rattled.
And when your expert opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, you saw no evidence of a contact wound in this particular case with Paul, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you were asked a lot, and let me ask you this. A lot of what was in that book, when they're talking about those contact wounds, they're exploring someone using a shotgun to commit suicide, correct?
Well, frequently contact wounds do indicate a suicide, but potentially people can be shot by another also at contact range.
All right. And your manner of death that you determined for Paul to a reasonable degree of medical certainty was what?
Homicide,
Homicide, which means?
death at the hands of another.
And did you see with this shot to the chest or the shot that went through the shoulder into his head, any evidence whatsoever that this could potentially be a suicidal wound?
I do not believe that it was at all consistent with a suicidal wound.
To a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
In your expert opinion?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about the head wound. And you've been asked a lot of questions about the possibility that this was a contact wound from the top of the head. Is that correct?
Yes,
And your opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, is that it is not.
it was not.
Okay. Now let's talk about, just very quickly, without belaboring the point, some of the reasons. First of all, you saw no soot, correct?
Correct.
And then also with the damage inside Paul's head, did you see any evidence that would indicate the force of the- Did you see any evidence that would indicate to you from the damage that Paul suffered that the force of the shot was going this way as opposed to that way? Going down from the top of his head as opposed to
Yeah,
going?
I don't believe that it was going from the top of his head down. I don't think the damage to the head was consistent with that.
Okay. And with the brain, you said that the brain came to you in a separate container, is that
Yeah,
correct?
most of it.
All right.
yes.
And did you, in examining the brain, did you see any evidence whatsoever that would have been consistent with the force of the shot, including the pellets and everything else going into the top of the head and into the brain that way?
No, I did not see any evidence of that.
To a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes,
Did you find any wadding in Paul's head cavity?
I don't think there was any wadding.
You were asked a lot about the shoulder and how it was, in the picture you were shown, it was more, in that picture at least, it was kind of a gaping sort of wound. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
Okay. And his shoulder was it kind of squinched up in that picture a little bit? I don't know if that's a technical term, squinch, but
you mean the photograph?
the photograph that you were showing.
Well, I took a picture of his, the shoulder area. Yes,
Okay. And just so I understand, as opposed to a direct on wound and sort of the size of that, and then a wound that goes along the side of the shoulder, like you identified in this case, explain to the jury again how those are going to create different shapes of wounds.
yes.
Your
So,
Honor, not in response. He's asking her to explain again. That would be repetitive.
I sustain the objection.
Was the wound to the shoulder, was that straight on or oblong to the side?
yeah, it was a tangential type of shotgun wound.
With that shoulder wound that you've identified that as the entrance wound, the initial wound,
Yes,
would you still expect to find the pellets in that wound consistent with what you saw in Paul?
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond. Nothing further.
Yes. Just a couple questions. I want to make sure I understand a couple of the answers you gave to the Attorney General. We previously established you did not see any real crime scene photos in this case.
Correct.
In many crime cases or some crime cases, do you look at crime scene photos to help you or assist you in your opinions concerning certain things on the autopsy?
No, honestly, I don't. It's my job to examine the body, and I come to my conclusions, and I don't really, look at the crime scene photos. I could potentially ask for them if I saw something very unusual, and I'll say, wow, how did that happen? Or sometimes I'll see an entrance gunshot wound that has, I'll assess it. There may be a lot of, glass around it, and I'll say, well, did this go through a window first? And I'll ask that question. I don't necessarily have to look at the photos. So there is information that I might ask, but, looking at the crime scene photos is really, not something that I do to help me come to a conclusion. Whatever's on the body, I will rely on what I see on the body. And if it fits with the crime scene photos, fine. But if not, I have my conclusions based on the body.
But you just conceded you do occasionally ask to see crime scene photos. Occasionally.
No, I don't ask to see the crime scene photos. I will ask to see, ask if something, like I just recently had a victim of multiple gunshot wounds. I thought she may have been sitting in a car.
Just say
Nobody
no and
told
go
me
on.
anything like that, because there was a bunch of
Too much explaining.
Glass
Just say no. I
fragments,
do not typically ask.
kind of all the entrance wounds were to the left side, and all the
I didn't
exit wounds
ask
were to the right, and then there were like
during this autopsy.
fragments of
Too much
glass
explaining.
and kind of car parts, banging into the skin. So I was like, was she in a car? But I don't ask to see the photos. Really, I don't. It's not part of my evaluation of the cause and manner of death doing an autopsy.
But like in this case, you had conversations with investigating officers, did you not?
At their request.
Did you have a conversation with Sweat Agent Owens about the bruising on her calf?
Well, I did not actually observe that at the autopsy, so I really couldn't come to any conclusion. And it's very possible that was dirt from a shoe that was already gone by the time it came to me. I'm not autopsying bodies at the
Too
scene.
much
There's,
explaining.
There's transport, there's movement into a body bag, but yeah, it may have been asked to me, but I distinctly said I didn't see that.
But you did have a meeting after the autopsy and your report with, I believe it's Lieutenant Owens with SWED, the chief investigating officer, and discussed did he show you the muddy print picture?
Objection beyond the scope.
Your Honor.
Objection is sustained.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably all I have. Thank you so much for being here
Sure.
today. But an opinion is an opinion, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
And a fact is a fact, bitch.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break for about 15 minutes. Please do not discuss the case.
Okay, I don't want to rattle paper. I was just about to open some more stuff. Lord. Again, probably, as you heard me say, my opinion, which is not a fact, is that she kept giving way too much information and explanation and giving the defense opportunities to find holes in her autopsy, her assessment. I don't understand why she went on so much about bullets and Crime scene photos, again, that's not in my scope of work. I think maybe she's so afraid of being caught, like, I'm saying lying. Not intentionally, like unintentionally not being accurate. Like, have you ever asked for crime scene photos? Or no, here's the better example. Did you ask for crime scene photos during this autopsy? No. That's not in my scope of work. Or just flat out no. Not no, but I have one time before. Oh, so you typically do, but you didn't for this. Why didn't you ask for crime scene photos for this one? Just putting doubt into the juror's mind that she did this autopsy accurately. Again, I'm kind of mad at her. She doesn't even know me, but I'm mad at her. And that should mean something to her. But again, this is my armchair commentary from someone who doesn't have her education, someone who's never been called as a witness. Just goes to show you how much subtle manipulation can throw someone off their rocker. And why I just don't doubt myself anymore when I feel like someone's trying to manipulate me. I'm not saying I know it every time, because I don't, but I definitely don't fall for the pathetic, feeble man bullshit. I'm going to hold my ground and we can talk for a while. And throughout our conversation, I'll determine whether or not you really are feeble-minded. Nothing I'm going to do is going to be insulting if you are feeble-minded. But I'm not in this situation. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help you out. I'm not going to help you understand. My job is not to help you understand. My job as an expert witness is to answer the questions. You think it came off as mansplaining her career? I'm glad some people see that. Stacy said that wouldn't work on me as a juror. It came off as him mansplaining her career to her. Yeah, and I really think she felt for it, because I think he was very good in the beginning of feigning ignorant and feigning helpless, which he probably, well, I know he planned for, but think of it even more in her state of mind. Again, she's a professor. She's used to being helpful. She's used to being in the headspace of, I'm helping my students understand. I'm an educator. I'm coming from a frame of mind that these are delicate and gruesome things to have to learn about, that it's complex and difficult to understand. So I'm going to have like grace for the person. Like, I think she's coming from oh gosh, I wouldn't want someone to feel like they're stupid. Like, I'm super smart in this area, but I totally get that I'm smart in this area. I'm not smart in all of life. So I'm used to someone being a student not knowing this information, and I want to come across to them and reconfirm in them that they're not an idiot, they just don't understand it. She fell for it. And it knocked her off her rocker. Yeah, Stacy says that's why I said it came off condescending. You could tell he was acting like a Columbo of lawyers, playing like he didn't get it. Yeah. And so far, I don't think a lot of people as witnesses have fallen for that. And I thought, even though she's not from South Carolina. She's lived here quite a bit, it seems, and she lived in North Carolina for a little bit, I believe. Lived and worked in both. She was recruited by MUSC, which the college, MUSC being the Medical University of South Carolina. So you've heard where a lot of these attorneys and law enforcement have all gotten their some sort of undergrad or more from USC, University of South Carolina. That's in the capital, in Columbia, it's the capital of South Carolina. Then there's the Medical University of South Carolina, and that is, I'm fairly certain they have campuses in Columbia also, as well as Charleston, because in USC, the hospital, teaching hospital college is in Charleston, which is not that far away, maybe an hour, hour and a half from where all of these murders and shenanigans occurred. My point bringing that up is I thought she would be more used to people like him and be less fazed by it. I was going to say more unfazed, but that just doesn't seem grammatically correct. I could see someone living here for maybe just a few years, but she has had to come across that type of behavior before. Heck, I'm not even really, I worked for a medical office for almost 5 years, and I get it. Whatchamacallit? Mansplaining, and in the professional world, a dude being a condescending dick, it's all across America and the world. It's not just specific to South Carolina. I worked in a doctor's office where there was some paperwork that I was responsible for and responsible to getting to the doctor. And it kept being blamed on me that it was missing, when in actuality, and this was like in digital form, I used to be a transcriptionist, a medical transcriptionist. So our doctors did, although we were in the office, they did procedures at the hospital across the street. And when I would transcribe like a new patient report or whatever it was, I would, at that time, fax it to their office at the hospital for their transcriptionist to get, so that the doctor could have the notes to perform the procedure. And I don't know how it went, but I know he kept blaming me, like, you haven't transcribed this yet, you haven't transcribed this yet. I'm like, okay, let me go check. Like, and I went to check, and it turned out, instead of transcribing it to me, he had transcribed it to the transcriptionist or he had dictated it, pardon me. So he didn't dictate it to my office. He actually dictated it to the transcriptionist at the hospital. That's why I couldn't find it, and that's why I had it, or didn't have it. And he came to me really like, oh, so have you found this yet? Like, really condescending, and I'm stupid, and, you know, just coming across. I was like, oh no, I found it. He's like, oh yeah, you did. I'm like, yeah, you dictated it to the hospital, not here. And he was like, oh, well, you know, and just kind of stormed off. So I really don't understand why I brought that up, other than maybe to say I've experienced this. And he's from West Virginia. So again, different Southerns. My point is this: I have had far more limited experience dealing with men in a professional setting, in a professional medical setting, than she has. I've had far less education and experience. And I know people are different. I'm not saying everyone has to be able to handle things like I do, but I'm just, from her confidence level yesterday, from her saying yesterday that she has been an expert trial witness over 200 times, roughly conservatively 250 times. Her working and living in South Carolina for, I think she said, around 14 years, and then a little bit in North Carolina before, which again, those are two different Southerns too. And they're different Southerns with, if you're in the mountains versus near the coast, near whatever. I'm surprised that she wasn't more prepared for the type of manipulation that I feel like he used on her. I thought she would have been more prepared for that. And yes, we can say she's on the stand, it's different, nerves, whatever. But again, she had stated that she has been an expert trial witness for this exact thing like 250 times. So she's got to know that people are going to try to question her. Well, they literally are going to question her, but they are going to question why she came to the conclusions that she did. That's literally part of the game. What do you think the defense is going to come up there and be like, oh my God, you explain things so well. Can you maybe say something a little bit differently? No? Okay. All right. No further questions. Of course not. Yeah. So here's me being a judgmental Judy. Not a judge Judy, a judgmental Judy. I'm also ignorant to how many times the prosecution and the defense team can go like back and forth with a witness. It seems, and if anybody understands differently, please feel free to educate me. But it seems like person gets on the stand, we ask questions, cross-exam, and one redirect. And then another cross-exam, and then they can't do anymore. That's what it seems like, because anytime there's a second cross-exam, it seems like the judge is saying, okay, you can sit down. It doesn't seem like there's ever an opportunity for the state to say, okay, we're going to redirect again for a third. Well, technically that would be second time, but third question. But I don't know how that works. Stacey says, it's like the scene from My Cousin Benny, except she fell for it. The lawyer here even reminds me of the prosecution from that movie, LOL. You know, I've actually never seen that movie. I don't think I was allowed. And as an adult, it's not one that interests me. But it's only because I really don't know what it's about, other than people saying, hey, My Cousin Vinny. It's really horrible. Horrible impression. My goodness. Words are blanking on me today. But again, see if I can pull up the tweet where Fitz News and others are claiming that Alec is going to take the stand. I think it's, even if it's true, quite frankly, I think it's just news trying to get views, but I don't think he's going to take the stand. I would love it if you would. I think it would put a nail in his coffin, but I don't think he's going to. I don't even think he would want to. And again, I don't got to, sorry, I'm reading what Stacey said. And I do not think the defense team would allow him to, even if he wanted to. And I just don't see him wanting to. I think he knows. And if he didn't know before, he can see that people are not are not buying his BS. So he can't sit on the stand and BS his way out of this like he's been able to do in person in a secluded vacuum type situation. What about the Utes? Is that what they say? I don't know. Oh my goodness. Let's see. We'll see what Mandy and other people are saying on Twitter. Normally have good points in conversation. I really like this person. I don't know who they are, but they say they live in Edisto. I've like started following them. I'm trying to, again, the more people who want to talk about this, the better. She says she lives in Edisto. Wyke Bartles? I don't even know if that's, and I'm calling her her. Don't know. But I really like a lot of the things that she says, and I interact with her, them, he a bit. She, here, let me try to, says something like, sounds like Harpootlian is trying to move towards suggesting Paul committed suicide. I wonder why we were harping, other than the obvious, trying to explain things to the jury, why we were so harping on where everything, where the bullets entered and exited. I think even Emily D. Baker said once, like, there's no argument to how these people passed away. So I'm thinking then there has to be a point in bringing up autopsies other than a dispute on whether or not they passed away from gunshot wounds, which no one is arguing, nor I think could they. Yeah, Joe Pesci keeps saying that instead of youths, and the Southern judge can't understand what he means. Oh, youths, yeah. So again, different Southerns. One of my best friends here, I love her. She has a thick Southern accent from around here. And I cannot for the life of me, we actually worked in the same doctor's office. One day she said something, and I'm used to like different expressions, Southern expressions. I can't think of any at the moment other than that's the way the mop flops, the ball bounces, and the cookie crumbles, but I don't even know if that's a Southern thing. But so Southern expressions I'm used to. This one I wasn't, paired with her accent. We had a fun, confusing moment. She told me, oh, well, they think they're slicker than owl shit. And I was like, oh my God, who is Al? Why did someone witness him shit? Why is someone determining whether his poop is intelligent or not? And why are they comparing themselves to the poop's intelligence? And we went back and forth for a sec. I'm like, what are you saying? She's like, slicker than owl shit. And I'm like, who is Owl? And she's like, Crystal, the bird. And I'm like, owl? You're saying slicker than owls shit? And she's like, yeah, slicker than owl shit. No. No. And there's different, I'm just going to totally nerd out. Yeah, owl instead of owl. Just going back to patterns and everything, different dialect. Where I grew up in Northwest Florida, in addition to the accents being different, we would say, how is it here? Like, hey, do you want some sweet tea? And people up here say, hey, do you want some sweet tea? Just different emphasis on different syllables, different words. But again, where I come from, it would be more like daddy, daddy. It'd be real like wide and slow. Here, it's really tight and fast. I worked at a sunglass store when I first moved here. I transferred, and a little boy walked up to the counter, and I'm like, I don't know what he is saying, like at all. He walked up to the counter, pointed to the glass, and said, Diddy, I want to see that par. Diddy, I want to see that par. And I'm like, and the dad like looked at me, didn't know he was a dad then because I couldn't understand what the hell he was saying. He looked at me like, well, you want to show him that par? I'm like, fuck are you saying? Diddy, I want to see that par was daddy, I want to see that pair. And again, where I come from, it'd be daddy, I want to see that pair. But here it's Diddy, I want to see that par. Still Southern, different regions, different dialects. Different to understand. And again, I think I have a very hint of a Southern accent, but I don't know which one it is. I've made fun of how people pronounce things around here so much that sometimes it actually comes out, which is fun. But my mom is from New England, so I've got a mixture. And again, Northwest Florida is kind of twangy and that, daddy, I want to see that pair. But I don't think it's like as obvious Southern as other places. So I say aunt and I say fixin' to. But I don't think I say fixin' to even like, I'm fixing to do that. I think I would have the more that I stayed there, but I don't really know what my accent sounds like now. I know that a friend of mine that is from the DC area says like, oh no, you have a completely Southern accent. And then a time or two when I visited one of my family members up in New England, people, especially the closer you get to Boston, are like, what in the redneck are you saying? I'm like, do I really? I think it's just very different. Sorry, my stomach is growling to you guys where you think it's Southern, but where I come from is not Southern. Stacy says, or quote, do you want some tea? Implied, do you need to specify if you don't want it sweet because that's default? People ask. I don't know. I've never, unsweet tea's from the devil, that just doesn't exist. So I've never known anybody to ask because yeah, it's just implied because that's the only thing that exists. Now, speaking of different regions, if you want to nerd out some more, the sweet tea up here is like sugar water. We like our tea sweet down in Florida, Bama, but it also tastes like tea. Here it does not taste like tea. It tastes like sugary water that just is brown. It's not very good. So I don't really drink it here anymore. But my Michigander husband, when we first started living together, went and bought sweet tea from the grocery store. I was like, you will get the fuck out of this house. You brew tea. You make it. Nobody buys sweet tea. Are you kidding me? I do buy Public sweet tea because that shit is the shit. Sometimes, Stacy says, my accent is super noticeable and sometimes not. My dad was from Arkansas, mom from Delaware, so mine is weird. Yeah, I can hear a hint in yours, but I even thought yours kind of sounded like a little bit from where I grew up. But I think I asked you one time if you were from like near Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. Sweet and strong. Yes, that's how all sweet tea should be, not sugar water. I'm not a hummingbird. I'm not. So, let me make sure I'm still not. I'm gonna stop the screen, but make sure the sound is up and then share some tweets from different people. Because this poor person didn't know they were going to be on the internet. All right. So, yes. I don't know how they pronounce Weish, whomever, whatever. Said, sounds like he could be moving toward suggesting Paul committed suicide. Pardon me. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think Paul had any reason to kill his mother at all whatsoever. They also say Dick Harpootlian is getting a bit too nitpicky and the jury will zone out. He comes across to me as harassing. Yeah, I agree. Harassing the doctor. I really wish Dick Harpootlian would stop wandering around while people are testifying. It's distracting, which I'm sure he's trying to do, not to mention rude. I bet Alec Murdaugh wishes that bottle of water he just chugged was a big shot of bourbon in a tall glass. Yeah, they say it sounds to me that Paul wasn't alerted to anyone unexpected at the kennels. First shot stunned him and he turned towards shooter. Second shot was fatal. Let's see what Mandy or Liz. Oh, I think that's what I was going to pull up is like Fitz News. I'm bitter about Fitz News too. Them claiming that they have a source that said the defense believes Alec is going to testify. Where are they? Guess they did a poll on would you hire Dick Harpootlian if you were accused of a crime? No and yes. As much as I don't like him, I probably would. Ish. I'd have some other people sprinkled on my team. You know, this is hypothetical. I would not intentionally commit a crime. And I would probably not have the funds to be able to hire them anyway. All right, let's go back. They're coming back in. Let me unshare this one and share the trial. And it's really good because I have got to pee. I just didn't want to just have a screen on here with nobody saying anything. Because I know me talking is way better than silence. My husband would agree as well. All right, I'm going to mute and go potty.
All right, thank you. You may call your next witness.
State calls Devin Newell.
Good morning.
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Your present testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth so help you God.
Yes.
As you take a seat in the witness stand, please. You can adjust the microphone. State your name again for the record.
Devin Patrick Newell, Newell.
All right. Good afternoon, or excuse me, almost afternoon, Mr. Newell.
Good morning.
All right. Where are you employed, sir?
General Motors.
All right. And what are your duties there at General Motors?
I'm a senior technical expert in advanced driver assist systems.
All right. And can you just give the jury a very short version of what that entails? Very short, please.
I investigate field performance issues and concerns with our advanced driver assistance systems.
And as part of that role, do you help maintain certain records that are kept by GM in the normal course of business?
I don't necessarily maintain those records, but I'm aware of records that we keep on servers relative to vehicle data that can be of assistance in our field performance investigations.
Okay. And when you say field performance investigations, that's something you do, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And that references generally what? What does that mean when you say field performance investigations?
Understanding how our vehicles may perform in the field. Active safety systems include things like forward collision alert and automatic emergency braking. So as we look at how those things perform in the field, vehicle data and other data we collect can be helpful in understanding what is occurring with those events, understanding how our systems are performing.
Okay. And do modern GM vehicles, under certain conditions, upload information to GM servers?
That's correct. We've got telematics units in our vehicles. That's a fancy name for sending information over the air. Those, as part of a normal course of business, those electronic modules in the vehicle collect lots of pieces of data from different sensors and modules in the vehicle. And that information can be sent via cell phone networks and or Wi-Fi back to servers at General Motors.
And General Motors then keeps that information in normal business, correct?
That is correct.
Now, if someone buys a GM vehicle and they're not comfortable with uploading certain types of information, can they opt out of some of the things?
Yeah, certainly privacy, customer privacy is a big concern at General Motors, as you would expect. We've got lots of teams that look at that, investigate, and understand that. And we've got various protocols in place to protect the customer's privacy.
Okay. And just let's speak generally again. What specific sorts of information is routinely uploaded from GM vehicles to GM servers?
It can be a lot of different pieces of information. Diagnostic trouble codes with your engines or brake systems. It could be information we upload. We monitor the performance of things like your battery to understand if your battery is getting low or needs some charging, and other pieces of information about what the vehicle may be doing. That can and does include, I would say, GPS information, your vehicle location, and potentially speed and things like that.
Okay. And that sort of information is kept by GM in the course of normal business, correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right. And I'm going to draw your attention to March of last year. Are you aware, at least as of today, that SLED sent a search warrant to GM?
That's correct. I believe a search warrant was sent to General Motors to generally request information we may have about a particular vehicle.
All right. And I know you don't have a search warrant in front of you, but did you make a note of what vehicle identification number or VIN that search warrant was requesting information for?
I do. I have that number here with me. I can read that.
Can you read that, please?
Yeah, VIN is the vehicle identification number that uniquely identifies the vehicle. It's a 17-character number. 1GN SK.
Is this OnStar, dude?
FK,
I heard that like some more data from OnStar, like maybe
210998.
GPS
Okay.
was found
and
recently.
Let's fast forward to last Friday, which I believe was February 10th, if I looked at my calendar correctly. Did it come to your attention that even though that search warrant had been served back in March of last year, GM in fact had some information that was responsive to that original search warrant?
Yeah, that's correct. I wasn't necessarily involved in the search warrant back in March.
He
but
ain't
I did
from
become
here.
Aware Friday evening that additional information not previously given before existed.
All right. And so GM did in fact have some information on servers for that particular event, correct?
That's correct.
That had not been previously provided to law enforcement prior
He
to
sounds
last
like
Friday.
he's from.
That's my understanding, yes.
All right. And
in
Okay.
Boston.
I'm going to show you what's been marked.
New
as
Hampshire, maybe.
515, 515.
We'll get in the car.
And I'm going to ask if you recognize this.
You're
Yes,
wicked
that's
smart.
correct. That's a CD with information on it that I reviewed on a laptop earlier today. And I signed and dated this.
He's from somewhere else.
And did you verify that the records contained on that CD is the information GM provided in response to the original March search warrant?
Yes, that's correct. I reviewed the 3 spreadsheets, Excel files that were on here, and those are in fact the same information that was stored in our databases and provided to you.
He's from
And
New
yes, I can
England.
authenticate that.
So those records contained on the CD are authentic.
I feel like he's from
records maintained by
Massachusetts, or
GM
I mean,
Force
Vermont or
Business?
New Hampshire.
Yes, sir.
Maybe Boston. I'm going to say all 3.
All right, and just briefly, what sorts of information is contained? And we're not going to ask you to go line by line or anything.
Can you tell, like,
Pretty
figure
normal
out
sound
people's
data,
accents? Because
Yeah, there's 3 different Excel sheets,
Of course it is.
information collected over 3 days. Again, as I kind of talked, I have not reviewed the details of this. I've not asked to analyze it.
Sure.
The form and content is what we get there. But generally speaking, that information includes, it says vehicle diagnostic information, information on the battery systems, and GPS information.
Okay, GPS information, including speed information.
That's correct. Longitude, latitude, speed information are included in there.
At this time, state would move and enter exhibit 515 and evidence. All right. All right, that's heard from the state.
By the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Just have maybe 1 minute worth of questions. So you were not part of the, you weren't working on this when the search warrant came in, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you just became aware of this on Friday?
That's correct.
How did you become aware of it?
GM Motors legal staff reached out to me.
he's from New Hampshire.
In response to the
All in.
subpoena
He's from New Hampshire.
as a person who could come down and authenticate these records.
The legal staff told you that you had information responsive to the search warrant?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the General Motors had information responsive, not me personally.
I apologize for that, of course, General Motors. Are you aware of the testimony that occurred earlier in this case regarding reverse engineering the electronics in the Chevy Suburban?
I have general knowledge that some FBI folks have looked at some information inside of the infotainment system in the vehicle.
I'm trying
Do
to
you have any
read.
knowledge of any reverse engineering efforts the FBI conducted over the course of a full year?
I have not been involved in those or not aware of any details of that, no, sir.
Maybe you can answer one quick technical question. The timestamps in this data, where do they come from?
Again, I have not reviewed this specific data. The timestamps on these things here, when GPS information is collected by a GPS receiver, included in that is timestamp information.
So what is he there to testify on if he hasn't just that the timing of the
And
warrant
finally,
information?
This is information that was uploaded to a server at GM.
That's correct.
Okay. General Motors. That's where he's from.
Anything further? You may step down.
Okay, so what was he for?
Let me call your next witness.
Roger Dale Davis.
What you gonna do, Roger? Oh, he has to be law enforcement. The way he's dressed.
Raise your right hand and raise your hand about it, please. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give today be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Where's the t-shirt and jeans for shorts?
State your
I
full
mean,
name for the record.
T-shirt
Spell your
and
last
jeans
name,
to
and adjust
court.
the microphone
The
for the
shorts? Are you law enforcement or a family member?
Name is Roger Dale Davis Jr. Last name is Dabis.
And Mr. Davis, do you go by Dale?
Dale, Roger, either way.
Okay. Or Mr. Davis?
It don't matter.
You can do me a favor.
He
Because
is from
it's a little hard to hear some folks in this courtroom, if you make sure that microphone's pulled close to you and speak into it, we'll greatly appreciate it. All right, Dale, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was born in Hampton County. I was raised in Hampton. Went to Wade Hampton High School.
It's weird. There's a Wade Hampton High School
And again,
here
if
in
you would,
Greenville, so I
please
get
try
thrown
to
off.
get a little
It's like
closer to that microphone. I know it's
right down
tight
the
in there.
street.
What line of work do you have you done?
Construction work all my life.
Did you ever have an opportunity to work at the farm in Moselle?
Yes,
Okay. Is that close to where you actually live?
mile and a half.
How did you become familiar with
Mile and a half.
and the Moselle property?
I
How
love
did you
it.
start working there?
I was walking and Alex would stop and talk with me, and he asked me one day about cleaning the kennels for him, and probably a couple months, 6 months later, then he asked me to come do it on the weekends.
I'm not making fun of them. I just like people's matter of fact answers.
And walk us through the process.
Pathologist should have
What'd you
probably
do?
taken
How many
notes.
times a day did you do it?
Twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening.
All right, what time in the morning, generally?
It average around 7.
You wake up early?
Oh, yeah.
So 7 a.m. and then what time in the evenings generally?
Usually around, I try to get there around 3:30, 4 o'clock,
How long does the process typically take you?
about 45 minutes.
And walk us through what that process is. What do you do out there?
In the morning times, I would go feed all the dogs, give them time to eat. I'd feed the chickens. That way the dogs would have time to eat. Then I'd wash the pens out. Then I would usually roll the hose up and then go to the house.
I just knocked a whole bunch of stuff over. That's what my face is for.
Repeat process.
Now you mentioned washing the pens out. Now the dogs, did they have dog beds in their
Yes.
kennels?
Yeah, Buster. Excuse me. Grady and Bubba had 2 dog beds.
And if you're washing it out, meaning are you spraying it with water?
Sprayed it with water.
What did you do with the dog beds?
I would stick them up on top of the dog box.
He's got a little bit of a Charleston accent, wouldn't
And
he?
then
Almost sounds
did you leave
Cajun.
them up there or did you put them back?
Normally typically, once I wash the pens out, I would lay them back down, especially if it was cold in the wintertime, I would lay them back down on the ground.
I
But during the summertime, you would wait
love
that
a
afternoon
Cajun
and lay them
accent.
back down on the ground.
It does something to me.
In the 4 years you worked there, did you get to know the property fairly well?
Yes,
Did you get to know the folks that live there pretty well?
yes,
Did you get to know Maggie Murdaugh at all?
yes, sir.
All right, well, tell us what your experiences with her were.
Normally, she was just so laid back. She would talk to you like a normal person. We'd sit there and talk about the
I love it.
dogs. She'd talk about sometimes where she would be at the beach. But she normally would tell
My
me,
kind of people. No
I'm
BS.
going to the beach.
Just-
I'm taking Bubba and Grady with me, or
There it is.
whatnot, or I'm gonna leave them. Or if it was real hot, she would want me to put them over there in the ice house, turn the air conditioner on, where they have the ice, the coolers at,
Did Maggie like to spend time with the dogs?
all the time.
And you mentioned the ice house. Was that the processing house kind of on the back of the hangar?
Property, that was
And why, was it air conditioned? Is that why you said she put them in there?
during the summertime, if it got real hot.
In that house, does it have air conditioning, that shed?
Yes, sir.
All right, did you get to know Paul at all?
Yes.
All right, what was your experiences with him?
Maybe so why would the
He was
dogs
a
be in the
little-
kennels and
little
not
wild
the
and
ice house?
crazy, but he would work. That boy would work.
He liked being at the farm?
He liked getting out and doing things, hunting, but he would work on the tractor or whatever and daddy needed him to do.
And did you get to know Alex?
I did.
The Is he here today?
Yes, sir.
Where is he?
He's sitting right over there.
Do you explain what he's wearing?
Wearing a suit, pair of glasses, blue looking shirt.
And what were your experiences with Alex?
He was always very particular. He would want the dog buckets washed out. If it looked like they started getting any kind of green or brown looking stuff in the water, he wanted to make sure, which I usually wash them out every 2 weeks anyway, with bleach. But I always dumped them every day.
Was Alex easy to get a hold of?
No.
All right, explain that. What do you mean by that?
He would either be in court or doing something with business. It would sometimes be a little bit difficult to get a hold of him.
Who did you see most often when you were out there?
Miss Maggie or either Paul.
And how did Maggie and Paul typically come to and from the big house to the kennel area?
Paul would usually be in his truck.
We've heard a lot about trucks. Which truck was that?
His white F-150. Unless his daddy had him doing something, then he would have to drive the F-250. But most of the time he'd be in his white.
Unless his
F-150.
daddy
What
had him
color
doing
was the
something.
F-250?
It was also white.
So 2 white trucks were what he typically used.
Yes, sir.
And how about Maggie?
She normally drove her Range Rover until she got the black Mercedes.
And then what would she drive after that?
Most of the time she would drive the black Mercedes.
And would she load her dogs, the house? Well, first of all, let's go back. Which dogs were down there? Do you remember all the dogs?
Bubba, Grady, Maggie. Then they started letting, can't remember his name right. Dahlia was there, Armadillo, and I call her Tappy Toes. I don't know what they called her, but that's what I always called her.
And I think the other dog, was that a dog owned by?
I love
Paul's friend
armadillos.
Rogan? Is that the one you're referring
That's so
to?
cute.
Yes,
What type of dog was it?
a lab, chocolate lab.
And which dogs were the family dogs?
Which we don't have up here. We don't have
Grady,
armadillos
Bubba,
up here.
and Maggie.
I miss them.
And what kind of dogs were they?
Labs.
And colors?
Bubba was yellow, Grady was black, and Maggie was yellow.
And would they where would they typically stay, those dogs, those animals?
It all depended on, most of the time, because Bubba was very rambunctious. So they would got where they would lock him up in the kennels at night. And most of the time they would lock all the labs up in the kennels to keep them from roaming off. But Miss Maggie would take them out when she was home. Usually a lot of times after I done left, she would take them up to the house, let them roam around the yard for a couple hours, and then she would bring them back down to the pens.
And would Maggie load them into her car if she was taking them elsewhere to the beach or wherever else she was staying?
Wherever she was staying at, she would load them in the vehicle. Most times she would load them right in her vehicle.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked states exhibits. Jim, any objections to these? I'm going to hand you what's been marked as states exhibits 505, 506.
I don't know
502.
if armadillos taste. The only ones I've encountered, they
504.
are scared and run away.
And 516.
But those are from
Now,
Florida, so I don't
please
know.
take a moment
I
to
don't know.
review all these and let me know if you recognize what they show.
They showed a kennel.
Okay, and then I believe there's one diagram there, if you recognize what that shows.
It shows diagram drawing of the kennel.
Very good. Your Honor, we move to place all those exhibits into evidence, I believe without objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted without objection.
show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 505. Can we have the envelope, please? Dale, while we get this loaded up, tell me a little bit. I know, did you have a particular way of hosing down and, with the dealing with the hose? Tell us a little bit about what that was about.
The particular way of me putting the hose away, or
Right.
normally after I got through washing, I would stretch the hose straight out
Into which direction?
back towards the shed room right there, the dog feed room.
All right, and we now have the Elmo up. We're looking at Exhibit 505, and the feed room, I believe, is what you're referring to. Is that the structure on the far right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then where is, in this picture, where is the hose you're talking about located?
It's back towards the left-hand side, back towards the forest end.
Is that yellow?
That's that yellow
wrapped up?
green looking hose.
All right, go ahead and explain to us what you would typically do after rinsing off and putting the hose away.
I would stretch the hose out back towards the feed room. I would cut the valve off at the top, which is right up above as the hose come in. Then I would walk back down and cut the valve on at the end of the hose. That way it would release the pressure, and then I would roll it up slowly until I had it uniform.
Were you pretty particular about how you wound that hose?
Yes,
And why would you do it that way? And did you do it that way every time?
every time.
And why would you do it so particularly?
Because if you notice how the hose right now is kinked up, it would start making the hose when, if you didn't do it right, eventually would it keep kinking, it would start making it where it didn't want to, and it would cause the hose to start having little splits in it.
The picture that you're seeing there, that hose, is that the way you would wind it up?
No,
How do you know?
I'm very particular how I roll that hose up, and it's kinked up. If you notice, there's pressure on that hose. Somebody used that hose after I did, because it is twisted, and the nozzle is too far up. The nozzle, I would always have it made sure it was laid down flat. That nozzle is too far up.
Dale, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 516. And again, please briefly explain what it is we're looking at there.
The drawing of the kennel.
Okay. I'm going to hand you a pen, and with the court's permission, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and fill in well, first of all, let's back up. Did you work were you aware of the events surrounding June 7th, 2021, where Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I received a phone call from CD that the slave wanted to see me because Miss Maggie and Paul had been murdered. And I thought he was joking, but he told me no. I told him, give me 5 minutes. I'll be up there because I was going to carry my trash off at the time. And I got up there, and the dogs was raising Cain, and I asked them, could I go ahead and feed the dogs so they would quiet down? And they told me to give them a few minutes, and then they gave me permission to feed them. As soon as I fed them, they just quiet down. They didn't bark no more.
So you were familiar about that incident?
Yes, sir.
And you went out there what day?
That morning.
Was that the 8th, the morning of Tuesday?
When the murders happened, yes.
Did you work every day leading up to that day?
Yes.
And did you do that normal routine, which you already described?
Yes.
All right. And did you in fact do that normal routine on the Monday before the murders?
Yes.
Okay. Walk us through that day. What did you do in the morning?
I got there, probably around 27, 8 o'clock. It all depends on when I got up. Most time I got up early, I would be there before 6:30, 7 o'clock. I would
He
go
said
feed
Alec
the
was particular, so I
dogs,
guess he had to be.
then go feed the chicken. That give the dogs time to eat their food.
They only have
and
one
then
chicken?
wash the pens out.
And was anything unusual or out of place when you were down there in the morning?
No,
And did you repeat the process again in the afternoon, in the evening time?
I did.
What time did you, on Monday, June 7th, what time did you go back to the pens?
I got there before 4 o'clock. But I remember leaving at 4:30.
All right. And was anyone there at the time you went to the dog kennels that day?
No,
Did you notice anything out of place when you went there to dog kennels in the evening time?
no.
And what did you do after arriving?
Well, once I arrived that afternoon, I got out. I fed Grady, Bubba, and Maggie. Because we fed them twice a day. The hunting dogs only got once a day. Took and fed them. I picked the dog beds up. I dumped all the water out because I washed all their bucket, gave them fresh water, washed the pens out. Stretched the hose out, cut the water at the valve off at the top. Went down there, cut the water on, the valve on down at the end of the hose so the water wouldn't come out. Roll the hose up, and at 4:30 I left.
And you rolled it. Did you roll the hose up the way you've always done it that day?
Every time.
Do you remember how the dogs were laid out in the kennels that day when you left?
When I left, yes, sir.
And with the court's permission, I'm going to ask the witness to please, if you would, write on that piece of paper, the exhibit, state's exhibit 516, beginning with, first of all, on the far right, what's that door signify in the
Storage
Got
room, feed room.
beginning with kennel 1 next to the feed room? What dog was in there when you left that day at 4 o'clock or before 5 o'clock?
Grady.
All right. If you would, please write Grady in there. Okay. And then moving on to kennel 2. What dog was in kennel 2?
Bubba.
And for our reference, Grady was the black lab.
Grady is the black lab.
Okay. And Bubba is a what?
Yellow lab.
Okay. And who was next to Bubba in pen 3?
Maggie, because
Okay, I'm gonna run out for a little bit and get lunch. I'll probably be back on this afternoon. I'm not sure. Because children. But thank you for being here. Thank you for entertaining all my accent evaluations. And I'm gonna keep listening, but I gotta go eat. Bye.